Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
True crime with a dash of the paranormal, the garish, the strange, and the darkly comic. I'm Zevin Odelberg, host of Kinda Murdery, a podcast that's about more than just murder. It's my very own pocket dimension, home to a curated collection of bizarre and compelling stories. The unsolved, the unsettling, and the unbelievable. I cover it all, just so long as it's kinda murdery. That's the truth. Just like it says in the intro, I am Zevin Odelberg, and this is Kinda Murdery. Hey my friends, I am so glad you are here today. I always do appreciate it when you choose to spend time with me. It really never gets old. So today I am bringing you a humdinger of a mysterious story. The story I found in Vanity Fair, an article called The Vanishing Blonde, written by the incredible Mark Bowden. And interestingly, it features a real-life private eye who we have featured before, that is Ken Brennan. If some of you will recall the episodes we did on the murder at the Hotel Elegante, a story which I also first came across in another fantastic article written by the amazing Mark Bowden. So if you want to read incredible true crime stories, look for just about anything written by Mark Bowden. My sources are in the show notes, and I'm not going to tell you much about it up front here because I'm pretty confident that this is a tale that's going to grab you right away. So now, if you are ready, please do join me as we uncover what truths we can and solve what mysteries we may. Kinda Murderies, Hotel Houdini, the mystery of the vanishing victim, starts now. In the early hours of a chilly winter morning in 2005, a grim discovery marks the beginning of a perplexing case that would haunt the western edge of Miami. Amid the liminal space where the orderly outer suburbia surrenders to the wild embrace of the Everglades with its towering grass and dark, unforgiving mud, a scene unfolds that seems almost too brutal, too out of place. A local power company worker navigating through the routine of his day drives by the desolate expanse of an unbuilt cul-de-sac. It's here, amidst the weeds and solitude, that he spots something. A young woman, only 21 years old, with long blonde curls, lies face down. She's naked, her body battered, an undeniable sign of the violence she endured. She's been discarded here at the very threshold of civilization and wilderness. The area, known for its neat grid of suburban life, now bears witness to a dark juxtaposition, the innocence of the landscape, marred by the cruelty inflicted upon the woman. Much to the power company workers' surprise, the woman is still alive. Rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital by police, she lays unconscious, and then she is airlifted with all haste into the expert hands of those who could save her. Upon regaining consciousness in the trauma center, her memories of the events that led her to the edge of the Everglades were fragmented, obscured by the trauma she'd endured, yet her body told a vivid, harrowing story of survival against a backdrop of unforgivable violence. She had been subjected to a savage assault, raped and beaten with such severity that it was miraculous she'd survived. The attackers had not spared her. Evidence of their violence was clear in the severe head trauma she suffered, with blows forceful enough to rattle her brain. Forensic analysis confirmed the assault, with semen recovered, pointing towards a heinous act of sexual violence. Her physical injuries were extensive. The bones around her right eye were shattered. In the midst of her trauma and confusion, her linguistic struggle added another layer of complexity to her ordeal. Her accent and speech patterns, molded by her native Ukrainian, made communication challenging. She dropped pronouns, inverted sentence structures. Her English was bent around the framework of her mother tongue, rendering her words difficult to decipher. Nevertheless, she managed to make one thing very clear. As soon as she awoke, the woman asked for a lawyer. It was an unusual request, one that hinted at a story that would veer far from that of ordinary sexual assault. Of course, we should all be horrified that there is such a thing as ordinary sexual assault, but nonetheless, it was uncommon for a victim still in the hospital, still suffering horrific injuries, to ask for a lawyer. And whatever the woman's reasons, investigators immediately knew that the truth behind this case was likely to be an elusive and many-layered thing. And indeed, as investigators began to peel back those very layers, the woman's fragmented memories and the physical evidence of her assault would serve as critical pieces in unraveling the mystery of exactly what had happened to her on that terrible winter morning. Miami-Dade detectives discovered that the woman had been residing for several months at the Airport Regency Hotel, a mere 8 miles from the desolate spot where she was discovered. The hotel, known for its crisp efficiency, was a favorite of business travelers navigating long-haul flights. The woman was employed by a cruise ship line, and her long-term stay at the hotel was the result of a severe finger injury she had sustained on the job. Her recovery was being overseen by her employers. As detectives delved deeper, piecing together her account of the events leading up to her discovery at the edge of the Everglades, a bone-chilling narrative emerged. The assault began in her hotel room on the 4th floor. Her attackers, she recalled, were 2 or 3 white men who spoke with what she perceived to be Hispanic accents, though she couldn't be sure. The terrible violence of the encounter was punctuated by moments that haunted her recovery. The stifling pressure of a pillow forced against her face, the bitter taste of the alcohol she was forced to consume, fragmented memories of being carried or dragged, the cold, physical and spiritual violation within the confines of a car's back seat, and her desperate pleas for mercy. These were vivid, traumatic flashes of memory, yet they yielded no substantial leads, no clear pathway to identifying her assailants. The case took an unexpected turn when the woman's lawyer filed a lawsuit against the hotel citing negligence. The legal action sought to hold the establishment accountable, targeting the financial depths of its corporate structure. This move raised eyebrows among the detectives. The dynamics of the case began to shift, prompting them to consider alternative angles. Could there be more to the woman's story than met the eye? The typical profile of a rape victim seemed to misalign with the emerging details of her case. The possibility of a sophisticated scam loomed over the investigation, casting a shadow of doubt on what had initially appeared to be a straightforward case of brutal assault. As the detectives navigated through the murky waters of the case, the line between victim and participant blurred, challenging their perceptions and compelling them to look beyond the surface of the woman's harrowing ordeal. In the wake of her brutal assault, Miami-Dade police detectives embarked on a meticulous investigation of the Airport Regency Hotel's grounds. Inside and outside the hotel, the place she had called home in the months leading up to the incident. They scoured her room for any sign of evidence, conducted interviews with hotel staff, and sifted through hours of surveillance footage from the morning of the attack. The detectives also scrutinized the guest list, a daunting task given the hotel's 174 rooms and the transient nature of its clientele. However, the sheer volume of the guests and the limited resources of a police department stretched thin by the demands of a high-crime area meant that running comprehensive checks on each individual was an impractical, if not practically impossible, endeavor. As days turned into weeks, the investigation found itself mired in a standstill. The sex crimes unit, despite their efforts, hit a wall. The absence of clear leads or actionable intelligence left them with a case that was as perplexing as it was frustrating. Detective Alan Foote, who spearheaded the investigation, summed up their predicament with a sense of defeat, noticing that their avenues for progress had, quote, dried up. The physical evidence of the assault was undeniable and disturbing. The woman had sustained severe head trauma, the kind that leaves lasting scars, both physical and psychological. Her right eye was surrounded by shattered bones. Yet, with the criminal investigation stalled, the pursuit of justice shifted gears, moving from the police department's jurisdiction to the civil courts. The hotel, faced with a lawsuit alleging negligence on their part, geared up for a legal battle. In a strategic move to bolster their defense, the law firm representing the hotel enlisted the services of Ken Brennan, a private detective. Brennan was tasked with a formidable challenge: to unravel the mystery that so far eluded the police, to piece together the events of that fateful morning, and to uncover the truth behind the violent assault that had taken place under the roof of the Airport Regency Hotel. Detective Alan Foote's initial reaction to Ken Brennan's involvement was, unsurprisingly, less than enthusiastic. The integration of a private detective into an ongoing case often meant unwelcome complications, and Brennan, with his striking presence, was no exception. Embodying the quintessential image of a private investigator, Brennan was a figure that could easily dominate any room. Middle-aged and deeply tanned, his gray hair and muscular physique were complemented by his choice of attire. Open-neck shirts that subtly showcased his strength, and a bright, solid gold chain that hinted at a life well lived. His appearance projected an aura of maturity, vitality, and success, elements that did define both his personal and professional life. Brennan's background was as colorful as his personality. He was a former cop from Long Island who also boasted experience as a DEA agent, a role he left in the mid-90s to explore new ventures including commodities brokering and private investigation. It was the latter that captured his interest and suited his talents. Brennan was known for his warm demeanor and quick, accurate assessments of those he encountered, coupled with an unmistakable Long Island accent and a straightforward New York attitude. His approach to relationships was simple. If he liked you, you knew it immediately, and a long-lasting friendship would ensue. If not, you'd be equally aware of where you stood. Despite his open, engaging personality, Brennan was not one to be easily shocked or enticed by the typical fare that fills the days of many private detectives. Domestic dispute and minor insurance fraud held little interest for him, leading him to decline them in favor of more challenging assignments. His clientele mainly consisted of businesses and law firms in need of someone with a particular skill set to uncover the truth in complex civil court cases. This case, with its layers of mystery and lack of clear leads, was exactly the type of challenge Brennan thrived on. As he stepped into the fray, his involvement promised to inject new energy and perspective into the investigation, potentially steering it in directions that the police had not yet explored. Ken Brennan approached his work with a principle that set him apart in the murky waters of private investigation. His pledge to potential clients was unwavering and clear-cut. He would commit only to uncovering the truth undistorted by any desire to manipulate outcomes in favor of his clients. This integrity was the cornerstone of his practice. While the positive impact of his findings on clients' cases was always welcome, it was never his primary motive. Brennan was not in the business of strategically winning lawsuits. He was driven by the allure of the unknown, the intellectual challenge of piecing together puzzles that seemed inscrutable to others. The task at hand in this particular investigation was anything but mundane. Brennan was charged with untangling the web surrounding the violent assault of a young woman, a case that had left seasoned detectives stumped and without leads. The questions that needed answers were foundational yet perplexing. Had the brutal attack occurred within the hotel? Or had the victim encountered her attacker or attackers elsewhere? What was the true nature of the victim's situation? Was she merely an innocent caught in a vicious cycle, or was her story intertwined with the operations of an Eastern European criminal syndicate? The possibility of her involvement in prostitution or being implicated in some other manner added layers of confusion and complexity to the investigation. Brennan faced a labyrinth of possibilities, each hypothesis branching into myriad questions, each as critical as it was challenging. The lack of definitive answers and the abundance of speculation only served to deepen the intrigue of the case for Brennan. His task was not simply to find the perpetrators, but to navigate through the fog of uncertainty and misinformation to uncover the reality of what had transpired. This was a mystery that promised to test his skills and determination, a challenge that Brennan was all too eager to accept. When Ken Brennan made his introduction to Detective Alan Foote of the Miami-Dade Police Sex Crimes Unit, he did so with the straightforwardness that comes from shared experience. He believed he'd found a kindred spirit in Foote. "I used to be a cop and a federal agent," Brennan declared, not just as an introduction, but as a statement of credibility. Foote, sizing up Brennan, found himself face-to-face with someone who not only shared his world, but also brought an outside perspective that could prove invaluable. Brennan wasted no time in laying out his philosophy, a mix of blunt honesty and professional insight. "Look, you and I both know there's no fucking way you can investigate this case," Brennan asserted. His words, far from dismissive, carried a weight of understanding, acknowledging the harsh realities of resource constraints and the complexities of the investigation. "I can see this through to the end. I won't step on your dick, and I won't do anything without telling you about it. If I figure out who did it, you get the arrest. I won't do anything to fuck it up for you." This proposition, forthright and devoid of any pretense, resonated with Foote. Here was Brennan not just offering to lend his expertise, but pledging to navigate the intricacies of the case with respect for the detective's role and the police investigation's integrity. Foote, confronted with an offer that broke from the usual solitary confines of his police work, made an uncharacteristic decision. He shared the contents of his file with Brennan, crime scene photos, surveillance footage, and the victim's fragmented, confused statement. Interviews with the hotel staff had led nowhere. They hadn't seen anything, and Foote had hit a dead end. Handing over the information, Foote's gesture was one of tacit collaboration, driven perhaps by a sense of desperation, but also by a recognition of Brennan's potential to make a breakthrough. Good luck, he thought, a silent acknowledgement of the daunting task ahead, but also a nod to the possibility that Brennan, with his unique blend of experience, determination, and straightforwardness, might just unravel the mystery that had eluded the police. As Ken Brennan delved deeper into the case, the previous efforts of an insurance adjuster caught his attention. By November 2005, 8 months since the woman was discovered, the adjuster had compiled a detailed summary that Brennan now reviewed with a critical eye. The victim's recollections were fragmented and inconsistent, complicating the narrative. Initially, she reported a single assailant, but this number fluctuated to 3, then 2, and her description of their accents shifted from Hispanic to possibly Romanian. These inconsistencies, combined with the lack of concrete evidence, had stymied any progress in implicating a suspect. The security infrastructure of the Airport Regency Hotel where the victim had been staying presented another significant challenge to the solving of the case. The property was well protected, surrounded by fencing with locked and monitored back gates. Egress was limited to a few points, all under strict surveillance. At night, access was further restricted, the back door locked, requiring remote opening. 2 security guards were stationed around the clock, their watchful eyes complemented by an array of surveillance cameras covering every potential point of entry and exit. The front entrance, the back, the lobby, the elevator leading from the lobby, and additional areas like the pool and parking lot. Moreover, the hotel employed a digital keycard system for room access, generating a precise computer record of each entry and exit. This system theoretically enabled the tracking of every guest's movements, offering a potential treasure trove of data for someone trying to piece together the events of that fateful night. Brennan now faced a daunting task. The security measures that should have safeguarded the hotel's guests now obscured the sequence of events leading to the victim's assault. Each piece of evidence, from the victim's fragmented memories to the extensive surveillance footage, seemed to complicate the puzzle rather than bring clarity. Yet for Brennan, these obstacles were not deterrents, but challenges to be overcome. With meticulous attention to detail and a refusal to be swayed by dead ends, he was determined to navigate through the maze of contradictions and security protocols to uncover the truth. Ken Brennan embarked on his investigation with the fundamental question that drives all detective work. What did he know for sure? He had concrete knowledge that the victim had ascended to her room on the 4th floor of the Airport Regency Hotel at 3:41 a.m., utilizing her keycard for entry almost simultaneously, and by dawn, she was found in the weeds 8 miles west of her last known location. The mystery centered then on how, within this approximate 3-hour window, she had managed to leave the hotel without any camera evidence capturing her departure. The hotel's surveillance system had thoroughly documented the victim's movements throughout the night, her bright red puffy jacket and shoulder-length blonde curls making her a distinct figure against the hotel's backdrop. Her restlessness was evident. After months of residing at the hotel, she frequented the lobby, engaging with staff and guests, stepping out for smoke breaks, her movements captured by the vigilant eyes of the security cameras. Her night was punctuated by outings, including dinner with a friend, returning around midnight, only to leave again around 3 in the morning. The front entrance camera recorded her departure and subsequent return following a brief trip to a nearby gas station to purchase a phone card for a call to her mother in the Ukraine. Her re-entry into the hotel and her final elevator ride upstairs were crucial moments. Notably, a large black man entered the elevator with her, engaging in a brief exchange captured by the camera. There was a 20-minute gap between her entering the elevator and using her keycard to enter her room, which sparked much speculation. But Brennan discovered that the discrepancy was due to the elevator camera's clock being out of sync with the computer system tracking keycard usage. This detail clarified the victim's movements up until she entered her room, but beyond that, the surveillance offered no further insights. Brennan's focus sharpened on the mystery of her departure from the hotel. Given the comprehensive coverage of the hotel's cameras, the absence of footage showing her exit raised questions. Brennan's meticulous review of the surveillance footage and the timing discrepancy provided a foundation upon which to build his conclusions. With the victim's movements accounted for within the hotel, The challenge lay in piecing together how she left the premises undetected. Ken Brennan's investigation took him into the heart of the mystery. How had the victim left the Airport Regency Hotel without a trace on the surveillance cameras? The hotel's security system, reliant on motion detectors to activate the cameras, had proven infallible against attempts by the Miami-Dade detectives to evade detection. Despite their efforts to move slowly or from angles they hoped the cameras would not cover, the system captured their every move without fail. One working hypothesis, that the victim may have exited through her fourth-floor window, was meticulously considered and then ultimately dismissed. The logistics of lowering an unconscious person from such a height without leaving signs of injury on the victim or disturbance in the bushes below defied logic. Even without these obvious concerns in regard to the feasibility of this scenario, Brennan still found it highly improbable, acknowledging that sex crimes are seldom, if ever, executed with such elaborate coordination and equipment. Driven by the conviction that the solution must lay within the bounds of the ordinary, Brennan turned his attention back to the more plausible route of exit, the elevator to the lobby and out through the front door. This path, however ordinary it seemed, presented its own set of challenges given the victim's absence from the video record during her supposed exit. The case summary by the insurance adjuster underscored the mystery, saying, quote, "Needless to say, the big mystery here is how this woman got out of the hotel," unquote. It was a mystery that until now remained unsolved. In a moment of insight, Brennan considered a new angle. Disguise? This single word, penciled onto a memo, opened up a new line of inquiry. The premise was simple yet potentially groundbreaking. If the victim had disguised herself or been disguised by someone else, it would explain her undetected departure through the hotel's surveilled exits. This theory required a thorough re-examination of the surveillance footage, so Brennan went through it again, with a keen eye for any details previously overlooked or any figures who might not have been given a second glance. Ken Brennan's meticulous re-examination of the hotel's video surveillance transformed into an exhaustive audit of every individual's movements within the hotel's confines. His methodical approach involved tracing the journey of each person or group from their entrance, as captured by the camera over the front door, through their progression into the lobby, and finally their approach to the elevator. The digital breadcrumbs left by the use of room keys corroborated these visual records, mapping each guest's entry into their respective rooms. A similar reverse sequence accounted for departures, with the addition of the parking lot cameras tracking the comings and goings of vehicles. Through this relentless scrutiny, Brennan methodically narrowed down the list of potential suspects. Criteria for elimination were strict and straightforward. Anyone leaving the hotel before the victim's last known entry without returning was discounted as a possible assailant. Similarly, guests who entered but were not recorded leaving, as well as those departing without luggage or with only a small bag, were also ruled out. No one was exempt from suspicion based on appearance alone. Brennan's keen eye also searched for any signs of nervousness or erratic behavior that might indicate guilt. This rigorous elimination process ultimately pinpointed a singular figure of interest. A very large black man with glasses seen entering the elevator with the victim at 3:41 a.m. His stature was imposing, standing at least 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighing over 300 pounds. The casual exchange between him and the woman as they entered the elevator suggested an initial absence of distress. However, it was his actions after emerging from the elevator into the lobby at 5:28 a.m. less than 2 hours later that aroused suspicion. The surveillance footage showed him nonchalantly pulling a suitcase with wheels, an item he did not possess upon his earlier entry. His departure through the front door, suitcase in tow, was captured with the same casual demeanor. Yet, the man's return to the hotel, conspicuously without the suitcase before dawn, raised alarming questions. His re-entry into the elevator to ascend to the upper floors of the hotel was the last piece of visual evidence captured. Brennan's focus on this individual was not just due to his proximity to the victim in the elevator, but was reinforced by the sequence of his movements thereafter, particularly the mysterious appearance and disappearance of the suitcase. The peculiar behavior of the large man hauling a suitcase out of the hotel early in the morning, only to return without it within the hour, sparked a critical realization for Ken Brennan. Coupling this observation with his thorough process of elimination, Brennan deduced that the victim must have been transported out of the hotel concealed within the man's luggage. Initially, the size of the suitcase seemed too compact, resembling those typically stored in airplane overhead compartments. but this was a deceptive appearance given the man's considerable size. Brennan was determined to quantify his hypothesis. He meticulously analyzed the surveillance footage, comparing the suitcase's dimension against fixed points in the video, such as the number of tiles it passed and the height of a bar inside the elevator. By obtaining a suitcase matching these calculated dimensions, a suitcase that was significantly larger than it initially appeared on camera, Brennan conducted a stomach-churning experiment. A flexible young woman, mirroring the victim's size, was in fact able to fit inside the suitcase, confirming the plausibility, or at least executability, of his theory. Further scrutiny of the footage revealed a subtle yet telling detail. As the man exited the elevator, the suitcase's wheels momentarily snagged on the gap between the elevator floor and the lobby. The man had to tug slightly to free his luggage. This seemingly insignificant moment, easily overlooked by most, revealed something absolutely crucial. The suitcase would have to be heavy to get stuck like that. A chill ran down Brennan's spine as he suddenly realized the truth about his suspect. It was the man's demeanor throughout the sequence of events, calmly interacting with the victim, effortlessly navigating the hotel with the laden suitcase, and casually returning without it. All of this belied the horrifying nature and danger inherent to the crime that Brennan suspected the man was committing. His composed behavior was starkly at odds with the typical disarray observed in individuals involved in violent crimes. Brennan, drawing on his extensive experience in law enforcement, recognized a chilling proficiency in the suspect's actions. The suspect's ability to carry out such a heinous act and return to the scene with apparent indifference suggested a terrifying level of experience. This man had done this horrible thing before. On November 17, 2005, Ken Brennan orchestrated a crucial meeting at the hotel, gathering the executives who had hired him, the hotel owners, insurance adjusters, and lawyers. The boardroom, typically a setting for financial deliberations and strategic planning, transformed into the stage where Brennan would unveil the sinister narrative that had unfolded under their roof. Brennan displayed on a laptop screen the pivotal image that had guided him to his current conclusions. The large man maneuvering his suitcase off the elevator. "This is the guy that did it. That girl's inside the suitcase," Brennan asserted with confidence. The reaction was immediate, but not the one Brennan had hoped for. Skepticism permeated the room, evidenced by snickers and incredulous glances. They were acting like he was crazy. "How'd you come up with that?" someone asked. Undeterred, Brennan laid out his methodical approach, detailing the exhaustive process of elimination that had narrowed the field of suspects to this single individual. Despite his meticulous explanation, the skepticism persisted, compounded by the victim's account. "Didn't the victim say that she was attacked by two white guys?" someone else questioned. Brennan, steadfast in his conviction, countered, "I'm telling you, this is the guy. Let me run with it a bit. If you're willing to give me the resources, I'll track this guy down." He framed his request as a mutually beneficial proposition, emphasizing the potential to significantly mitigate the hotel's liability in the ongoing civil suit by proving the assailant was not an employee. "What could be better?" he argued, envisioning the positive implications of apprehending the true perpetrator. "Think how good you guys will look if we actually catch the guy responsible. You'd be solving a horrible crime." Yet the room remained largely unconvinced, their skepticism a tangible barrier to Brennan's plea for further support. In a final bid to sway them, Brennan highlighted the suspect's demeanor. "Look at how cool this guy is," he urged, replaying the footage. "He just raped and beat a woman to death, or he thinks he has, and it's not like he's nervous and jittery at all. He's cool as a clam. Now you tell me the kind of person who could do this kind of thing and be this nonchalant. Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means it ain't the only time he's done this." The boardroom, which up until that point had been a scene of pivotal confrontation between Ken Brennan's conviction and the stakeholders' skepticism, shifted then into a space of negotiation and calculation. The discussion that unfolded was not merely about the pursuit of justice or the unraveling of a heinous crime. It became a deliberation of cost versus benefit, a stark, heartless business calculation, at the core of which lay Brennan's fee juxtaposed against the potential to mitigate the hotel's legal and financial vulnerabilities. Despite the varied motivations in the room, Brennan remained singularly focused. His interest was not in the why behind their eventual decision. It was the continuation of the investigation that mattered to him. The awakening of old instincts, a deep-seated drive for justice, propelled him forward. Brennan had not personally met the victim, Yet the proximity to solving her case, to pinpointing her assailant, ignited a fervent determination within him. The attacker, roaming free nearly a year after the crime, unaware of the tightening net, represented more than just a suspect to Brennan. He embodied the elusive adversary all detectives yearn to confront, the moment of revelation, the gotcha that validates the painstaking journey of investigation. The hotel's decision, hanging in the balance, ultimately tipped in Brennan's favor. Management, albeit reluctantly, granted him the green light to proceed. Brennan, bolstered by a slim margin of support, felt an even greater urgency to validate his theory, to vindicate his approach, and above all, to capture the man who he believed had eluded justice. The challenge of convincing the stakeholders had only intensified Brennan's resolve. With renewed determination, he set out to follow the trail that he hoped would lead to the moment of capture, to the unveiling of the truth, and to the delivery of long-awaited justice for the victim. And if you want to find out what really happened, if you want to find out what Ken Brennan does next, then please do join me next week, Thursday, March 28th, for Kinda Murderies, Hotel Houdini, The Mystery of the Vanishing Victim, Part 2, which will be the thrilling conclusion of this story. But don't go. Before I let you go, I'd like to spend just a moment talking about the key takeaways, the lessons that we can glean from this story, the fundamental human truths that may be applicable somewhere else in our lives. I'd like to talk about key takeaways and the moral of the story. And as always, I make no claims to being the sole reservoir of wisdom or truth. You don't have to buy my key takeaways. You don't have to buy my moral. Please do draw your own conclusions. But here we go. Here are the 3 key takeaways. Number 1, persistence alone is undefeated. In this story, we see the unmatched power of being relentless. Ken Brennan's dogged determination to solve the case, despite facing initial disbelief and skepticism, and frankly, facts that make no sense and facts that no one else could make sense of, shows that unwavering persistence can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles and uncover truth. And this is true, by the way, not just in the pursuit of truth and justice, but in anything you pursue in life. If you refuse to stop beating your head against that wall, eventually you'll knock a hole in the wall. Maybe you'll knock the whole wall down. I truly believe this. If you don't give up, you will succeed. Maybe you won't succeed in exactly the manner that you thought you would, but you will. Persistence alone is undefeated. Number 2, most problems are more than just ditches to be dug. They're more than just brute force or manual labor. Solutions often require inspiration and creativity. Problems, challenges, especially thorny, complex ones like Brennan faced in this case, and continues to face, by the way, because remember, we'll wrap up the case next week, but complex problems cannot always be solved with straightforward linear approaches. Brennan's hypothesis about the suitcase illustrates the need for creative thinking and innovation in problem solving. And not just creative thinking and innovation, but also inspiration. Solving problems can be an art. Sometimes you can't force it. You have to wait for that light bulb moment. Sometimes the path to a solution is as unconventional as the problem itself. So that's number 2. Most problems are more than just ditches to be dug. Solutions often require inspiration and creativity. Number 3, commerce. And this one should come as no surprise to many. Commerce can be the enemy of justice. The hesitance of the hotel's stakeholders to pursue Brennan's lead, primarily due to financial considerations, underscores the tension between commercial interests and the pursuit of justice. This takeaway basically is telling us that financial implications can sometimes overshadow the moral imperative to seek truth and accountability. I don't think I have to explain this one further. We all live in this world. We all know what that's about. Sadly, sometimes the only thing that ultimately determines who's right and who's wrong is who's got the most money. And finally, the moral of our story so far. And the moral is, an open mind may find what open eyes miss. This is the essence of the entire narrative, or at least of Brennan's case-breaking aha moment. It demonstrates that openness to unconventional ideas and the willingness to consider all possibilities are crucial in discovering truths that may not be immediately apparent. In Ken Brennan's case, it was his open-mindedness and ability to entertain a highly unusual theory that allowed him to progress in an investigation where traditional methods had reached their limits. So there you have it, the moral of our story so far. An open mind may find what open eyes miss. All right, that's the show for today. I can't wait to see all of you back here next week for the conclusion of Hotel Houdini, the mystery of the vanishing victim. Until then, I'm Zevin Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.
If you like the show, please subscribe, review, and tell your friends. You can find us on social media at Kinda Murdery or email at kindamurdery@gmail.com.